Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book America's Ethical Archetype, no other than Mr. Damien Terrence Dubose. Welcome to Book One of the Miss Nine. Can you please introduce more about yourself?
Hello, Daniel. Thank you for having me. My name is Damien Terrence Dubose, financial professional originally from Baltimore, Maryland, now residing in the Washington, D.C. area. And I'm here to talk about my book, which is basically revolves around how the intersections of psychology, philosophy, and politics. So,
Mr. Damien Dubose, thank you so much for sharing your book to the world. Can you explain what you mean by ethical archetype in the context of American society?
essentially, what it's about is getting to the foundational understanding or beliefs that would result in individualism or a system like capitalism. As you may know, or have been seeing it around the world, it's a lot of political division, but especially being in America, I see that. And what I mean by that is just that there's a specific psychological approach or method to arrive at a system, that respects individual rights and allows for capitalism as a social economic system. So it just examines those foundations.
How would you describe the current state of Americans' moral authority and why you believe it's broken?
Um, Essentially, what I would say is that they are just mixed premises, to make it simple. And what we have is people arguing about, politics, which is understandable. And I guess what I really wanted to just dig into was, because a lot of people do argue from the position of some people are not educated, some people need to be educated more. And I want to examine some of the things that we've learned in the discipline of psychology and relate that to our moral premises, how do we set moral premises, how important are moral premises, and philosophical premises, and relate that also to psychology and human development and what we know about human development. And are we exhibiting the traits that we've learned? If we're coming from a more educated, understanding society, are we exhibiting these traits and examine that? And that's what I wanted to bring to the surface.
Very well said, Mr. Damien. Very well said. So, what role does psychology play in establishing moral authority, according to your book?
What I do is I take a psychological system, Carl Jung's psychological system, and I use this as a tool. It's not to say that there aren't other systems that could be used, but I do believe that it is a good tool. And I pull that apart just to say, with his system, he identifies certain foundational understandings. One of those is introversion versus extroversion, which many people may believe it to be about social interaction, but it's really more than social interaction. When he speaks about it, it's more about a person's relationship to their inner world and their outer world, or their subjective world and their objective world. And what he does is he just takes that as one of his foundations, and he also takes some other concepts, what he calls thinking and feeling, is what you call rational concepts, and sensation and intuition, which he calls irrational concepts. And just using that system as a tool, as a guide to identify, okay, what type of what style of, I guess we would say, cognition does a philosophy of individual rights derive from? Can you derive it from these other premises, or can they not be derived from these other premises? And so some of that comes out with him talking about there are older ways of approaching psychology, and it's a more collective way and a way where you have a lot of unexamined premises and beliefs. And so just pulling that apart just to say, well, To actually derive at a philosophy that respects individual rights and free choice, you have to approach it from one of these styles that he details in his work.
Mr. Damien, you talk about correcting broken politics. What are the biggest political issues you believe stem from ethical failure?
So I guess if I were to say the biggest, just the individual's right to choice, that would be the biggest. Just to take a simple argument from kind of tied to what I was just explaining, is just there is from Jung's work where he describes a mentality that's rooted in a collective, what he calls unconscious. And it's just more of unexamined beliefs and operating on your day to day without really paying attention to what's at the root of your decision making. And what I'm saying is that when you do that, you come to the world from the position of, I get to choose from other people. And this is not something that you consciously choose, but this is what you see people do. And a philosophy that respects individual rights and people's rights of choice, you can't transgress those principles. When you approach it from that position, you're going to automatically transgress those principles. So that whole idea of individuals have choice and we respect their choices, and that's why we have markets, and that's the area where they can exercise their free choice. And so I guess that would be the foundational issue, the ability to respect people's choice.
Is there a historical period you point to as a model for America's ethical leadership?
I guess you would have to go to the foundation of America, just in the deriving of the principles, the Constitution. And you can point out flaws in how it was exercised or how it was actually applied. But I think that in theory, it's sound. So it's not necessarily a time period that I point to. It's a combination of all of these factors to say, okay, this needs to be established. And it relates to psychology, which I could dig in a little bit deeper. But that particular time when it was derived, yes. But how can it be improved? What do we know now? How can we better articulate what was assumed at the beginning? So those are the kind of things that I'm talking about.
Totally agree with you, Mr. Damien. So, how do you define moral authority in contrast to political power?
So I would say that moral authority is the basis or the grounds that you should set politics from. So another strong theme in the book is I use Ayn Rand's objectivism, and I basically juxtapose these two systems of thought against each other. And with her system, her philosophical system, her politics are derived from her ethics, and those ethics are derived from more psychological concepts like a psychometaphysics and a psychoepistemology. What all of that just means is that if we're going to have a system that respects the individual, then we need to make sure that we adhere to that when we are applying our ethics and our and our politics. And this is what I'm saying is that's the shortcoming that I'm seeing, the failing that I'm seeing. So that moral authority is just, what does it take for a person to live life? What are the necessary things or choices or freedoms that we need to have a good life, to exercise our choice, to navigate the world? And are we creating political systems that are cohesive or do account for that? And that's more of is moral authority driving the way that we derive for understand or exercise our politics.
What are some common misconceptions people have about ethics and politics that you address in the book?
One would be that the group overshadows the individual. I think that a lot of people, and the way Ayn Rand poses it or explains it, is an altruistic premise. And this is just more of a philosophical, related to philosophy and just putting others above oneself. And you see this theme in Christianity a lot. And it's understood what people mean. I mean, you get what people kind of mean with it when they're trying to approach it that way. What about all of these other people? But really, you should be looking at first principles. What about yourself? And then applying that to your interactions with others. And so that's the misconception, because what you end up doing is you're trying to solve a problem with the conclusion. You're not going to the root of the problem and understanding the cause for the conclusion. You're ignoring the cause and trying to just get to a conclusion without examining its premises. So that's the main misconception that I see.
Certainly. Mr. Damien, what will be your short-term and long-term goals in writing?
Oh, well, short-term goals for me has just been to, I guess, make the point that I'm trying to make. It's a very philosophical point, and it has, an abstract point, and it just has philosophical grounds, and it's psychological, and sometimes it can be a little detached. And I'm just trying to relate these abstract principles to how it can show up in people's lives, like make it relate to their day-to-day lives. And that's not an easy task, really, because one of the main points is that you need a North Star for life. You need an abstract idea to adhere to show integrity, to keep a consistency in your life, and actually it grounds you and helps you regulate your emotional well-being. So just to keep honing that and creating that story and tying it to people's lives. And I guess long term, that's a similar thing, just to give people an understanding of how things should be. I know a lot of times what I see today is just a lot of complaints of, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. And to me, that's more of an avoidance tactic. You're not presenting a world that you want to see. And so therefore, we're just stuck with whatever we get. I want to use these understandings to build a future to say, no, this is the world that we want to see. This is how we put it in place. And these are the actions that we need to take to get to that world.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Damien. And what would be your advice for those people out there who want to write their book in the same genre what you are doing right now?
I would just say, just go for it, because I never envisioned myself to be an author. I never thought that I would ever write a book. This was just more of a compulsion in a sense. It took a long time. It was very hard. It was very difficult. I woke up every day and just pushed through, and it's just my passion for the topic and for the issue that got me through it, and also a fear of not completing. That's part of what got me through it as well. But yeah, just do something. I guess just start, and then just be intentional about what you want to do. Break it down into pieces and just execute from that.
Thank you for your advice, Mr. Damien. You propose a new psychological framework. Can you give us a glimpse of what that looks like?
So I guess in the psychological framework, I wouldn't say I propose a new one, right? I would say that I advocate for an approach to life based upon what I've learned from these systems of thought. And I mentioned two of them already, with Carl Jung and Ayn Rand, but I can also bring in a third that just I can use to triangulate and get to the same place. Robert Keegan, the developed system of psychological development. But what it is just approaching life from your standpoint and owning your choices. So to give an example, it's not required that you love people. It's not required that you have to do things for everyone else. What you would want to do is to choose to do those things. Don't do those things out of obligation. Do those things because you want to interact with this person. You want to form good relationships. You want to be a trustworthy person. You want to, pursue your goals, have a relationship. Make sure that you own those choices. And in that way that you can consciously pursue and be intentional about those choices. And you can actually value those relationships and those pursuits in your life. Because if you do those things without actually choosing them, you might wake up one day and say, you know what, I've pursued a life that I didn't even want. I pursued a life that other people wanted or what I thought other people liked. And this wasn't really the thing that made me happy. You want to do the things that you truly own and you value and pursue those goals, because those are the things that when you look up, those are the things you're going to be really happy about.
Do you believe America's two-party system can survive without a fundamental ethical overhaul?
No. Short answer is no. And we're seeing that now because we're arguing from different principles. And it's not, I wouldn't even call the issue that both parties have different principles. Because in a sense, I do believe that they are similar in many ways. They're collective, but just on different premises. And you can get into the nuances of all of those different premises. But the short answer is no. What has to be adhered to, especially in America, to stay true to being America and stay true to being to keeping with the essence of American individualism and capitalism and freedom of that nature, there has to be an acknowledgement and an acceptance that individuals have their own choices and they can exercise that choice. That has to be the baseline foundation of everything. The group cannot override that. We cannot violate that principle, because once we do that, then we're going to get into this back and forth argument of, well, what group should dominate the group? Should it be, I don't know, I'm just throwing some names out there, Christians or gays or blacks or whatever. It doesn't even matter what group that you enter in there. Some group gets to override the decision making of the individual, and then that's an unjust system. So the point of it is that do we have respect for individuals? Yes, that's my position, and that is the position that must occur, in my opinion, and then move forward from there. How do we balance these other things with respect to individuals having their own agency and choice?
Mr. Damian, how can everyday citizens contribute to restoring ethical leadership in America?
Oh, everyday citizens. I mean, so my book is really about leadership. It really focuses on leadership. And I don't try to I'm not very critical of everyday citizens in my book, because I think what they lack is leadership to help them along. People have lives to live. They've got hard times to go through. They've got to wake up. They've got to work. They've got relationships. They have children, families, and all of these things. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have an understanding of these ideas, but the ideas that I'm really working with in this book is an indictment of our intellectual leaders. And not even so, some of our political leaders, yes, but I think our political leaders are highly influenced by our intellectual leaders. And so my push in this book is just to say, we need better from our intellectual leaders. If we know something and we're not using that to make a better world, that's a problem. If we know that individuals, that identifying your values and working up from there is a better or more healthy way of approaching life, and we're not saying that when we're having political discussions or ethical discussions, then that's an issue. So to get back to your point, is just that your question is just, for me, my book is an indictment of leaders, not necessarily the everyday individual. Those leaders will help those individuals to develop strategies and tactics and techniques to actually actualize these core principles. But I'm really focused on leaders in my book.
What was the most challenging part of writing this book?
It's a foundational issue. So when I say that, I mean that I argue that morality is the basis of everything. Our idea of morality is the basis of everything that we do. And so you have to balance all decisions within that. You have to examine how we approach everything in life, not just a career, not just your family, not just your relationship, not just your politics. That was the most difficult piece with that, because that causes you and forces you to really, examine your thoughts. You can't, because they have to be coherent. They have to all fit in with each other. You can't have a compartmentalized view. Well, this part means this, and then, well, over here we have to have this other view that doesn't connect to this. No, it all has to connect. And so that was the most difficult part for me about writing this book.
Interconnectedness, people. So, Mr. Damien, were there any surprising discoveries you made during your research for America's ethical archetype?
Um, I, I mean, this book transformed throughout the process, and I think the whole identification that everything can be boiled down to a relationship, the individual's relationship to life. To me, I mean, that is kind of the conclusion that I get to, but I didn't expect for it to be that at the beginning, and I didn't expect for it to be so clean at the beginning. That was surprising to me because, like many people, I probably, life is complicated. There's just so many different pieces to it. And if somebody were to say, well, it's all about this one thing, you may take it and say, okay, maybe, but what about if I have to do that? And what I think that I've accomplished is to say, no, it all starts here. And I'm not saying that I have come up with this. This is not complete original work. This is using work from other thinkers. But the triangulation just helps me, present a new way, or helps me deliver a new way to present that argument.
Totally agree with you, Mr. Damien. And you speak about correcting politics. What practical steps do you recommend for political leaders today?
Um, uh, I just I don't know. So for political leaders, I just think conviction. I think be earnest about setting your premises, have conviction, and act on that. Act with conviction. Because when you start getting into, the optics of everything, I mean, even specifically in trying to get elected, get into the thing with optics and are your answers genuine, or do you have a script, or do you come across likable? Do you come across relatable? And you get into all of these things and they don't really relate to what is just, what is right, what is ethical. Now those things matter. I get that, but the foundation has to be set. So to me, just do the work, understand, and I mean, I offer my book as a helpful tool, but do the work to understand what's at the root of everything that you believe about or your political views, and set that foundation. Then you can build on top of that with your ability to get your message across, and present yourself in different um, scenarios, and with different groups to different audiences. But don't start with that first, because if that's your premise, then you don't really have a foundation. So yes, so set this philosophical moral premise.
America's ethical archetype. Do you hope readers will change or act after finishing reading it?
Was the question do or what? What do? I might have cut out.
How do you hope readers?
Okay. So I think I hope that it helps them think differently. That's my goal. I think that's kind of the goal of all literature throughout history, if I'm not mistaken. But my 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 goal is to just help people, get that view of, well, how can I be integrated in my approach to life? Can I, I want to challenge them. I want to challenge them because I know that there are things in this book that's going to challenge most conventional thinking. And I want them to ask themselves specific questions. Am I integrated? Is my story coherent? Is my approach to life, coherent? And I think once you make that change in their minds, it sets the seed. Because, and I'll just enter this one other piece. One thing I just want people to say, and I said this before, change your mind from I have to do this to this is what I want to do. Just that small change in everything you do, that intentionality in everything you do, that changes everything, that choice. So that's one simple thing that anybody can do.
Is your book aimed for political leaders, scholars, or general public?
I would say that it's really written for leaders, and I wouldn't even say political leaders only. It's more, I think it's about intellectual leaders. I'm speaking to philosophers. I'm speaking to people who work in, psychological discipline. General population, I would like if they would, want to read the book and get an understanding. I think it offers a lot of tools or understanding, explanation of foundations. But like I said, this is more of in criticism. I'm being critical of leaders, intellectual leaders. That is the target for this book, in all honesty. I think when I say, and at the beginning, I think I say, this book is aimed for conceptual thinkers, people deeply concerned about morality, and also people who have a sense that some of the mainstream narratives that they've been receiving is just something not right about those narratives. It doesn't sit with them well.
So, are there any thinkers, philosophers, or psychologists who heavily influence your work?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've named a couple here: Carl Jung and Ayn Rand. Those are they are the two kind of pillars that this book is built around. Carl Jung in the psychological world, Ayn Rand in the philosophical world, and that's kind of like where I start to create the basis for my arguments. So they are heavily influential in the book. I mean, since then, I've also delved into human behavior or human development. Some of Robert Keegan's work. There's some other work of like Charles Duhigg, from habits, how to create habits, and how this all relates to like our neurological framework. So I wouldn't say that those things influence the book, but those are the ties that I'm trying or have been making since creating this book.
Mr. Damien, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, and its fifth season, fifth season, with Chef Alessandro, one of these specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letters senders all over the world. So please do listen Food 101 wherever you listen your podcast. Mr. Damien, what's next for you? Are you planning to follow up or related project?
For me, I just try to still push in the book and developing these ideas. I would like to have discussions. I always like to hear from people, opportunities to discuss, come on podcasts and talk about these ideas, because it just requires fleshing out these ideas and setting that framework to move forward, in my opinion. No necessarily, maybe some writing, shorter form writing in the future. I don't have any plans for another book right now, but those are kind of what I'm pursuing at the moment.
Mr. Damien Terrence Dubose, thank you so much for sharing America's ethical archetype. So can you please invite our listeners to support your book?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes, I mean, you can find my book at DamienTDubose.com, Amazon. You can find me at Damien T. Dubose on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So yeah, please get a copy and check it out, and I hope you let me hear from you.
Yes.
Please.
Leave a review, people, please.
Yes.
People, let's support Mr. Damien Terrence Dubose, because if you support him, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Damien, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Daniel. Appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.